our 6 steps for up-leveling your health coaching skills. The first one I want to talk about today is really getting clear on the coach approach. So when I say the coach approach, really what I mean is the coaching mindset. So really helping you get your head around the fact, what really is coaching and how can I shift out of being the expert? So I've done a whole mini training on this. There's a whole other video around this particularly. So I just want to give you the overview now on this one. So really, I think this is the number one thing. So what happens is so many of you, like me, probably went to health coaching school because you're really interested in health and wellness. People in your life are really always asking you questions, and you're sharing, with your friends, family, colleagues, all the things that you're doing to be healthy and well. You're sharing tips and suggestions and ideas and recommendations. And then you get into your health coach training program because you feel like, I really want to formalize this. I'd love to. It's really important for you to embrace the coaching mindset. So letting go of your clients. So we're helping them do some self-exploration, to set goals, to develop action steps, and really become accountable to themselves. That's really what we want to hope for our clients. And we wholeheartedly embrace that they are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, and they have the answers inside of them. So we're holding that the client isn't broken, the client doesn't need to be fixed, but that's sometimes what happens in the expert model, right? With a doctor, with a physician, with a therapist. That's maybe sometimes the mindset they have. That's not the mindset that we have as a coach. So really, our process in coaching is all client-centered, which is also different from those other models. It's client-led, it's client-centered, and we really show up as the advocate for our client in helping them move toward the health and vitality that we know is possible within them. We want to help them take responsibility and ownership for their own health and well-being. And by developing the trust and the balance in the coaching relationship, we know that the coaching relationship can then empower the client to move toward their goals. So we really, in this coaching mindset, we're really helping the client develop self-efficacy, which is all about them believing in themselves. So we're using our tools to really help the client see the possibilities, to see their strengths and values to move forward toward their goals. And finally, in this coaching mindset, the coach approach, we do not do the work for the client. The client does their own work. So that's getting clear on the coach approach and really understanding that and embracing it as the foundation of our competence and our confidence as a coach. So the second step is to understand what it means to coach to the gap. So you may have heard this in coaching terms, coaching circles, coaching lingo. It wasn't taught to me in my initial coach training, but I learned it along the way. And to be honest, this was one of those things that absolutely helped me understand what coaching was all about. So really, really, really important for you to understand and grasp this one. And really what it's all about is helping you as the coach understand, what's my role here? When I get into a coaching session with a client, what's my job here to do? And this is, helpful in any coaching interaction, but especially, as a new health coach, you may come, in contact with a client who has a very complex medical history or past, maybe there's psychological trauma, childhood trauma, and the client starts to tell their story, and you're taking all of this information in and you're thinking, oh my goodness, how am I ever supposed to help this person? What's my role as coach in all of this? So this coaching to the gap, to me, really helped me understand this piece. So I'll share with you now sort of exactly what it means to coach to the gap, or what does that mean. So, it's not really our job to dig into their past to find out why they are the way they are, to analyze and process childhood traumas or anything else that they've gone through. Really, that's the job of a therapist, a mental health practitioner, a psychologist, psychiatrist, all of those great people who do amazing work. That's not our job though, right? our job is really, and this is so important to understand, is to meet the client where they are today and help them move to where they want to be in the future. So really, really important. We accept them, we meet them, want to understand where they are today. And in coaching, we call this understanding the current situation, the current scenario, the current state. What's the situation that brought the client to coaching? What are they stuck around? What do they need support around? So we really want to get a nice, clear picture of the current state. Then we help the client look ahead to the future. So where do they want to be? Is that in 6 months, a year, 2 years, or 10 years down the road? What's their ideal scenario? What's the vision that they have for their health and well-being? So that's the future state piece. So what we have now is we have the current state where they are today. We have the future state where they want to be in the future. And what we do is we coach to the gap. We coach to that space in the middle from where they are today and where they want to be in the future. So we do that with all of our coaching skills by helping the client come up with an action plan, goals, action steps, and through accountability. So that's what we mean by coaching to the gap. Where's the client today? Where do they want to be in the future? And really our place, our job, our role, the value that we bring is to help get the client from where they are today to where they want to be in the future. That was like so eye-opening for me. And this can be used in every aspect of your coaching. It can help with helping your client set goals. So, when you're doing that initial planning, it can also be used in every coaching session. So where's the client at the beginning of the coaching session? What do they need your coaching support with? And where do they want to be at the end of the session? So we can use it on a bigger scale and also, on a smaller scale with individual sessions. So that's really what it means to coach to the gap. And if that's helpful for you as it was as helpful for me when I learned it way back when, to really focus and guide my coaching, it was just really, really blew me away to understand this sort of little mini framework and what that means. So it can really help to guide your coaching process. So coaching to the gap, learn it, understand it, practice it, really, really important to embrace and understand. So the third step that was helpful for me in building my confidence and growing my competence was to learn how to dance in the moment. So this is, again, another coaching term that you may have heard, but may not have exactly been taught. And this gets a little bit to the art of coaching. Coaching just isn't a methodology, a framework, a process that you're going to take the coach through. It's a lot about the being. So how do you be with your client instead of all the doing? And we talked about this a little bit last week when we talked about trust and the balance of power and how we really show up in our coaching relationships. So discovering how to dance in the moment with your client is really about that being. And it really is about, your coaching presence. So how do you, in your coaching, show up as grounded and centered and fully present in the moment to hold space for your client? So that's what dancing in the moment's all about. It's how are you showing up? How are you establishing your coaching presence? Is there a little ritual or practice or something that you do before each coaching session in order to show up in that way? I know before I do these Facebook Lives, before I do a coaching session, before I teach my classes, I'm always doing a little bit of a ritual, a little practice that I do before every one of those to really show up grounded, centered, and fully present so that I can hold space and that I can be really in the moment. So dancing in the moment with your client that's how you set it up. That's how you can really be present. But it also means just going with the flow with your client, right? So going where the energy is. So it's all about letting the client lead. So we've all heard about that as a coaching term. We let the client lead. So what that means is the client owns the content. So whatever the client wants to work on, talk about, discuss, share is absolutely up to them. That and the coaching agenda as well is up to them. All of that part of it is up to them. What the coach owns is the process. So we facilitate, we keep our eye on the time, we use our coaching skills throughout the course of our coaching session. session, and we, bring accountability and all of those great skills and tools that we have, we bring that to the session. But we're really allowing the client to lead, and we're dancing in the moment. So I just think this is a beautiful aspect of coaching. And again, it's part of the art. It's something that you do have to practice to feel really comfortable in and embrace. So it really means you're flexible, you're able to bend and flow with wherever the client is going. And it's about trusting the coaching process, it's about trusting the client, and it's about trusting you yourself as the coach, which is really important. So you do have to have that presence of mind to be able to have that beautiful dance and flow with your client. You let them set the agenda, they lead the session, and they take steps in any direction, and you just go with them. This happened the other day in a coaching session I was in, and we actually had a predetermined agenda for the session. The client had sent me some worksheets, some exercises they had prepared in advance, so we were going to go through those. But as we got into the first segment of our coaching session and we were doing the accountability check-in, what was she working on and how did it all go, I realized there was a lot of energy there. And so we decided in that moment that we would go with that. We started to flow with it. We started to feel where that energy was. And, I said at one point, this is a little bit off from what we had originally intended for today's session, but it really feels like this is where your energy is. There's some excitement here. It's really building. So, does it feel right for you that we move in this direction? And she agreed, and we just kept going with it. So it's, yes, you might have an agenda. Yes, you might have, set an intention for the coaching session, but just be with it in the moment. That's all about dancing in the moment and really checking in with your client along the way to say, does this feel right for where we are right now? So you as the coach, you really follow and you track the client using your coaching skills and techniques, but you really bring that lightheartedness, that graceful flowing energy to just be there wherever the client needs you to be. So you're remaining present to the client, you're really looking at that big picture, kind of where are we, what are we going through here, and really what you're listening for is that we're moving the client forward to where they want to be. So as long as we're moving in that direction of possibility of where the client wants to go, then you're good. If this is something that's totally an offside or a rant or a rabbit hole that the client's going down, we want to be conscious of that, and we want to really bring that to the forefront. I feel like we're getting off track. I feel like we're going down a rant here. So just be really conscious about this. But if it feels like the energy is beautiful, that's where the client wants to go, that's where they need to be in the moment, dance with them. It's really beautiful when that happens. So again, it all comes back to fully trusting the process, the coaching process, fully trusting yourself as a coach, and fully trusting your client. So dancing in the moment, really another important foundational principle of coaching that I think for me, when I just was able to have that freedom to be in the moment and to maybe let go of some of the agendas and that I had to figure it all out, that was really freeing for me and really helped me sort of take my coaching to the next level. So that was number 3. Then the fourth step that I have for you today is all about honing your active listening skills. So, this really is the essence of coaching. We have our mindset, we have dancing in the moment, we have being present, but we also need to have those active listening skills. This is really the foundation of coaching. So we're really listening to be an effective coach. And, listening is so important because number 1, we want to understand the client. So we want to have the information and the facts that we need to coach the client. And then secondly, the client really needs to feel heard and listened to in order to build that trust and that rapport and to have that faith in the coaching relationship established. So that's really why listening is so important. So we could think about, listening in 3 different ways. So we listen to the content, to the words and the information that the client is sharing. So we listen to what the client does and doesn't say. We listen for what they're saying beneath the words. So in between, beneath, we're also listening in a different way to see, what isn't being said. And then we're listening with our heart, our intuition, our senses, to see what's my gut instinct telling me here? What else might be hearing that the client actually isn't saying? So those are 3 ways that we're listening. And it's really important that we demonstrate that we're listening, again, so that the client can really feel heard, listened to, and so that that trust is built. And we use different ways to let the client know that we're listening. We use nonverbal cues, things like eye contact, our facial expressions, movement and posture. Those really come into play, obviously, if you're in person with the client, and a little harder to foster when you're online or over the phone. But there are also things that we can do that are those nonverbal cues, things like our voice tone, our volume, our inflection, accentuation, emotion, and energy. So all of those things, if we're not in person with the client, can really help them know that we're really hearing and listening to them. Another big aspect of our active listening skills that really help the client know that we're listening are these other skills that are so important to build. Things like reiterating, requesting clarification, paraphrasing, reflecting back the client's feelings, and summarizing what we've heard. So these are all parts of the active listening skills. So we're listening with, to, and for all of those other things, and then we're doing these other active listening skills once the client speaks to really have the client understand that we've heard them. So, it's so important that the client knows that you've heard the words that they've said, and not only the words that they've said, but also that you really understand the meaning, the feeling, and the importance of what they've said. So one other active listening skill that's really important for you to build and hone and develop is silence. And this is a hard one for new coaches. We want to fill in all those blank spaces and those pauses. We want to, prove our worth and our value to the client by talking and sharing all kinds of information and sounding really smart. But silence is such a really powerful active listening skill that really does wonders for your coaching. So, you know what it is. It's taking that pause. It's holding that space for the client. And really, once they've had a chance to answer your question, having that pause, really letting them think deeper, holding that space and allowing, for deeper thinking to happen, for percolation to happen, for them to go to maybe a deeper place. So you ask a really high mileage, powerful question, and then you just allow the space. And you really sit there until whatever comes up from the client. You don't pressure them to jump to an answer. So you're giving them that time to think, provide more detail, reflect on what they say, on the process, and really get curious about what else is there. So the client may respond, and then you may dig a little deeper, with another powerful question, but really give them that space. So a really important active listening skill is to really start to get comfortable with that silence, because it can be really powerful in our coaching. So that's number 4, hone your active listening skills. Practice those, get good at them, because they're really at the foundation of our work as coaches. So we're gonna move on to number 5, which is all about those high mileage and powerful questions. So we really wanna fine tune those. And again, when it comes to coaching, this is a little bit of an art. There's a lot of artistic aspects when it comes to coaching. There's no black and white or right or wrong way to do things, but it's really developing your competence and just really that art and creativity around some of these skills. So one of the biggest tools, in addition to our active listening skills in our coaching toolbox, are these powerful questions. So what they do is they, number 1, open up our clients to possibilities. And that's what we want to do, right? We want our client to look at the big picture, look at what's possible. What could they dream of? What's the ideal scenario for your life? So it's a big part of what questions do. Questions also help us as the coach get clarity and detail and information. But I will say that, and I'll come back to this after, that the high mileage questions are for the client, they're not for the coach. Like I just said, we do need to get information from the client, we need to have that understanding, but all of our questions, all of the work that we do in a client session is there to serve the client, not the coach. So we'll come back to that in a minute. High mileage and powerful questions help us develop rapport. They can really promote that deep thinking. They provide some clarity and focus. And it really honors the client, this foundational principle of coaching, that the client is creative, resourceful, and whole, and they have the answers inside of them. So powerful questions honor that, right? Because we're asking those questions because we know those answers are there. So I want to talk a little bit about good questions and bad questions, some that work better than others. Number one, we want to avoid leading questions. So leading questions are not good questions. They lead our client in a direction. It's like we're assuming the answer and we're using our own bias, our own, triggers, behaviors, beliefs to guide the client in a certain way. So we want to avoid those leading questions. And it's a really a common mistake actually for new coaches to ask a question make a suggestion in the form of a question is what I'm trying to say. So things like, did you think about doing this? Yes, that's a question, but we're also making it a suggestion. What about doing or trying this? Again, a question, yet a leading question. So those do questions are not great. Do questions are also not great because they're closed-ended. They really provide a yes or a no answer, so they're not great. So if you find yourself always using those, do you think, do you feel, do you, do you think you could, you should, all of those kinds of things, just notice if you're using those types of questions because those aren't great questions. Another common mistake for new coaches is for coaches to just consistently ask questions. So it's almost like the coaching becomes an interrogation. We're just hitting and hammering at the client one after another with question. So we really want to balance it out. High mileage question, follow up, allow the client to, take some time to really think, they respond. You might, ask, tell me more about that. Is there anything else? So digging deeper a little bit. And then, maybe another high mileage question. But we really want to balance it out. High mileage question, active listening skills, really repeating, summarizing, repeating back what we're hearing, and then moving on to that next question. Really, again, letting the client lead and using those questions when they're powerful, when they're really needed to take the client to that next level. So some good questions, things that we can use, are the open-ended questions. So these really are the opposite of yes or no questions. So they require more of a lengthy answer, a lengthier, more thoughtful response, if you will, as opposed to just a yes or a no answer. So we really want to use those open-ended questions. Mostly those are the W questions. So who, what, where, and when. A lot of times we add why onto our list of powerful questions, but not in coaching. I did training way back when in public relations, and so we were really talking about how we interview people and how we report on things, and why is definitely included in those types of questions. But when it comes to our clients, why is not a very powerful question. It can tend to put the client on the defensive and sort of make them kind of withdraw and maybe even feel bad about themselves. So these would be, why didn't you, why did you think that? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you? Why do you think? Why did you? And that doesn't feel really good. It sounds a little bit accusatory. So we want to avoid those why questions, but what we can add into our W's is the how question. How is a great question in coaching? How might you go about that? How might you learn about that? How else can you learn about that or figure that out? How will you hold yourself accountable? Really great high mileage questions to use how. So we're looking at who, what, where, when, and how as some powerful questions. We already talked a little bit about the why and why that doesn't work. So we want to avoid why and those do questions. Do you think and why not the best? So I wanted to get back to the point that I was talking about, that high mileage questions, powerful questions, are there to serve the client. They're not for the coach in terms of our ego. So, maybe we're really curious. The client has said something and we're like, oh, that's fascinating. I'd like to know more. But it really doesn't serve the coaching session. It doesn't serve the coaching purpose that you're working on with the client. So if you're just noticing that your questioning becomes more ego driven, or something from your own beliefs or background or triggers, just be conscious of those, because really the questions are there to serve the client, not you, the coach's ego. And it's not to, be performing. I have this roster of wonderful high mileage questions that I'm going to sound so intelligent, with my client. It's not, again, about serving your ego as the coach. It's really there to serve the client. So just to be conscious of that. So I hope some of those tips are going to help you fine tune your powerful questioning and those high mileage questions. And that brings us to our final step, our final foundational piece, which is all about becoming an effective accountability partner for your client. So, this is really the value we bring to our clients. I know that you know this, that most of our clients know what they should be doing around their health and well-being, the things that could help them move in that direction of better health and well-being, but they're just not doing it. So if they could have done it on their own by now, they probably would have. So that's where a coach can come in. It can really come in to help with the doing. And we do that by being a great, effective accountability partner. Like I said, it's a really big value that we bring. And, in my work that I do with IIN and coaching students, I hear a lot of times in coaching demos that, we get to the end and the client comes up with an action step. Yes, I'm going to start meditating this week. And the coach says, great, awesome. I look forward to hearing about how that goes. But there's no real accountability set up for that, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we can get deeper with that and how we can make that really effective. So really, we want our clients in the end of our coaching engagement to become great accountability partners to themselves. That's really what we want. This is developing that self-efficacy so that they really believe in themselves and that they know they can do it. They know they can make these behavioral changes. But for most people, especially when it comes to health and wellness behavioral changes, which are pretty tough, they need a little bit of help to get started. And so again, that's where we can come in and that's where we can help them. So, we also have to believe, in this unconditional positive regard for our clients. We want to really trust that they do want to succeed. They do want to reach their goals. They want to do their homework and their action steps. But a lot of times on their own, clients just, life is busy, life is hard. They lack that follow through and they might end up sort of in that place of self-sabotage. They don't have that commitment just on their own. So what we do is we help them set intentions. So this is how we set up the accountability. We help our clients set intentions, goals. We set up agreements with them. And so when the client does this and they've, agreed to do something, they've committed to do something with another person, they're obviously going to be more accountable. The more people that we can tell about our action steps, our goals, what we want to do, the more accountable we're going to be. So that's really going to help them overcome some of that self-sabotage, that resistance to change, and hopefully they're going to have a better and more successful outcome with that accountability. So really, what do we mean by effective accountability other than just being there for them and asking them in the next session, how did that go? Well, number one, it starts with setting realistic and attainable goals. So they have to have a goal first. It's going to have a specific and a doable action plan, which is really, really important. We want to identify barriers to success. So what could potentially get in the way, and can we develop some backup plans? What are the scenarios? What do we think that could be obstacles for you meeting this action step or this goal? And let's develop, a plan B or a plan C if necessary. We also ask the client about additional supports they might need in moving forward with that action step or the goal. We really set up the follow-up. How are they going to hold themselves accountable? Who else are they going to be accountable to? And then we help them celebrate when they've accomplished that goal. So accountability really is worked into the entire coaching process. It starts from that very beginning trust part with the client all the way to, having some action steps at the end of the session. So in my example before, if the client says, well, I want to start meditating, great. When are you going to start? How long are you going to meditate for? How many days a week are you going to meditate for? Is there any research that you need to do in order to figure out what type of meditation you're going to do? What do you need to do to set yourself up for success? Are there other supports that you need to do? What time of day are you going to meditate? If it's first thing in the morning, is there anything that you need to do before you go to bed that night in order to really do that meditation in the morning? So we're going to ask all of those questions so that the client has a really specific and detailed action plan when they leave the coaching. And then the number one thing we're going to do when we meet next time is follow up on how that went. We call that the accountability check-in. So that's how we become great accountability partners for our clients. And again, a huge value that we provide as coaches. So those are my 6 steps to up-leveling your coaching skills. That was a lot to take in. And as I went through this, I thought, yes, absolutely. Each one of these could be their own little mini training session. So let me just recap what we talked about today, things for you to really start building and honing and practicing in your own coaching practice. So number 1, getting clear on the coach approach, that coaching mindset, and really shifting into that. Number 2 is all about understanding what it means to coach to the gap between the current state and the future state. Number 3 is all about discovering how to dance in the moment, that coaching presence and letting the client lead. Really important. Number 4 is about honing those active listening skills. Number 5 is about fine-tuning your powerful questioning, those high mileage questions. Number 6 is all about becoming an effective accountability partner. So I know that was a lot to take in. If you have any questions about any of these, please just post them in the comments below and I'd be happy to answer those. I hope this has been helpful. I know for me, like I said in the beginning, as I look back on my coaching journey over the last 10 or 12 years, these were really the fundamental, foundational coaching principles, tools, aspects, skills that really helped me have that solid foundation, have the competence and have the confidence to put myself out there as a coach, to work with thousands of clients over the last 10 years, to build an online group coaching program, and to work at IIN, coaching health coaching students. So please, questions, post them below, be happy to answer, and I look forward to talking to you next time. Bye for now, everyone.